My sister accidentally slashed every tire on my $54,000 Tesla Model Y after I refused to fund her $20,000 vacation. "Oops, don't park near me next time," she laughed. My mom said, "You know she hates being told no." I stayed calm and said nothing. At 8:10 a.m., when she opened her apartment door and saw what was taped across it, the parking lot was still wet from the sprinklers when I pulled in, 7:15 on a Sunday morning, and the only sound was the timer clicking off on the irrigation system near the fence. My son Ezra was asleep in the back seat with a library book open across his chest, page bent at the corner where he lost his place somewhere between the highway and the exit ramp. I sat there for a second with both hands on the steering wheel, watching the water beat up and slide down the hood of my Tesla. I bought that car 14 months earlier. A Model Y, $54,000 after taxes and registration, paid in full, with 3 years of disciplined saving and zero help from anyone in my family. The day I drove it off the lot, I transferred one thing from my old Honda to the center console, a brass tin box, small enough to hold in one palm, with a dented lid and a folded index card inside. My grandmother Pearl wrote on that card the summer I turned 16 and started bagging groceries at Wexford for $7.25 an hour, 22 hours a week. The card said, "Every dollar you earn is a vote for who you are." My first pay stub was tucked in the tin with it, still creased down the middle from the day I folded it. I mention this because 2 weeks later, my older sister Celeste would throw that tin on the asphalt at 11:47 p.m. while slashing all 4 of my tires with a box cutter, and my mother Loretta would be sitting in the passenger seat of Celeste's car, interior light on, watching the whole thing. But that Sunday morning, I did not know any of that yet. All I knew was that the sprinklers had turned off, Ezra was waking up, and we had a family dinner at my mother's house in 6 hours that I was already dreading. My name is Yara Beckett. I am 32 years old, and I work as a compliance auditor for a distribution company called Redline Logistics. My days are spent reviewing vendor contracts, cross-referencing payment authorizations against purchase orders, and documenting internal control failures. When a supplier's invoice does not match the contract terms, I write it up. When a payment goes through a channel it should not have traveled through, I trace the path backward until the numbers explain the story the people involved were trying to hide. I am good at this. My family has never once asked me what I actually do for a living. Celeste, the one time she brought it up at Thanksgiving 3 years ago, called it paper babysitting. Celeste is 4 years older than me. She has always been louder, more visible, more demanding, and more forgiven. When we were growing up, Loretta used to say Celeste had big feelings and I had quiet ones as if volume determined value. Celeste dropped out of a dental hygienist program at 23, worked retail positions that never lasted more than 14 months, and lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment on Sycamore Street that she could not consistently afford. Her credit cards lived near their limits. She carried all of this with the confidence of someone who believed the universe owed her a correction. I had been divorced for 2 years. Ezra and I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of a building with good locks and a numbered parking placard. It was small, it was clean, and every piece of furniture in it belonged to me. The Tesla was in the lot, fully paid for, insured, and registered. Every dollar tracked in a spreadsheet I updated on the 1st and 15th of each month. If you are watching this channel for the first time, welcome to Karma Unfolded. If you have been here before, you already know how these stories go. The quiet one is never as quiet as they think. The family dinner happened that Sunday, the 1st of June. Loretta's kitchen, small and warm, with a window over the sink cracked open because the oven made the room too hot. Celeste was already there when Ezra and I arrived, sitting at the counter with a glass of red wine and her phone face up beside her plate. Loretta was pulling a casserole out of the oven with both hands, elbows wide, steam rising between her wrists. The table was set for 4. The first hour was unremarkable. Ezra ate quietly and drifted to the living room to read. Celeste talked about a coworker she did not like, a restaurant she wanted to try, and a vacation she was planning to Tulum with a friend from work. Loretta nodded at everything Celeste said the way she always did, with a slight tilt of her head and a half smile that communicated unconditional approval regardless of content. Then, about 40 minutes after the plates were cleared, Celeste set her wine glass down with a deliberate clink and turned to me. I need $20,000 for the Tulum trip. The flights are already booked, the resort is non-refundable, and I need the rest by the 15th. She did not ask. She stated it the way someone states a fact about the weather. I set my water glass down. I am not giving you $20,000, Celeste. Loretta stopped wiping the counter. The sponge stayed pressed against the granite. You just bought a $54,000 car. Celeste's eyebrows lifted. You have the money. I saved for 3 years to buy that car. That is not the same as having $20,000 to hand over. You always do this. Her voice went up half a register, the way it did when she was preparing to escalate. You sit there with your little audit job and your little apartment and act like helping your own sister is beneath you. You saved for 3 years for a car, but you cannot write one check for your own family? Loretta made a small sound from the sink. Celeste, maybe not tonight. No, Mom, she needs to hear this. She buys a Tesla and parks it in a lot next to a dumpster and acts like she made it. Yara, you are a paper pusher at a shipping company. You are not rich. You are just cheap. It is not possible, Celeste. You mean you do not want to. That is also true. The kitchen went still. Loretta was holding the sponge with both hands now, squeezing it slowly. Celeste looked at Loretta, then back at me. Her jaw tightened. She leaned forward with both forearms flat on the counter, and when she spoke, her voice was loud enough to carry through the open doorway to the living room where Ezra was reading. You drive a $54,000 car to a 2-bedroom apartment, and you tell me you cannot help. Pearl's little tin box is the only inheritance you will ever give Ezra. A boy that quiet does not get that from nowhere, Yara. He gets it from a mother who has nothing to say. Through the doorway, I saw Ezra's head turn. He looked at me for a long moment. His book was still open in his lap. He did not say anything. Then he turned back to the page, but his eyes were not moving. He was listening. I stood up, picked up my bag, walked to the living room, and put my hand on Ezra's shoulder. Get your shoes. Loretta followed me to the porch. She put her hand on my arm and said, You know she hates being told no. Just help her. You know how she gets. I pulled my arm back gently and walked Ezra to the car. Loretta did not come after us. She stood on the porch with one hand on the railing, watching me buckle Ezra into the back seat. Celeste appeared behind her in the doorway and called out, Tell her to come back inside. Mom, she is being dramatic. Loretta said nothing. She went inside and closed the door. The drive home was quiet for 3 blocks. Then Ezra asked if Aunt Celeste was mad at him. I told him no, that it had nothing to do with him, that some adults struggle with hearing the word no. He asked if we could stop for ice cream. We did. He got strawberry and ate it slowly, watching the parking lot through the window of the shop. When he finished, he looked at me and said, Grandma Pearl's box is still in the car, right? I told him it was. He nodded and went back to looking out the window. That night, after Ezra was asleep, I sat on the edge of my bed with the lights off. My phone had 4 missed calls from Loretta and 1 text from Celeste that read, You could have just said you would think about it instead of embarrassing me in front of Mom. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just a rewrite of the evening that made her the one who was wronged. Pearl would have told me to let it go. Pearl also would have said that letting it go and being a doormat are 2 separate things. I let it go. For 13 days. On the night of June 14th, a Saturday, I went to bed at 10:30 p.m. Ezra was asleep by 9. My phone was charging on the nightstand. The parking lot outside my third-floor window was dark and quiet. At 11:47 p.m., according to the timestamp on my Tesla's Sentry Mode camera, Celeste pulled into the lot in her silver Honda Civic. She parked 3 spots away. She sat in the car for nearly 2 minutes. Then she got out, walked to my Tesla, and started cutting. I did not see any of this in real time. I learned it at 7:15 a.m. on Sunday morning, June 15th, when Ezra and I walked outside and found all 4 tires flat, not soft. Slashed, long, deliberate cuts through the sidewalls, deep enough that the rubber was peeling away from the rims and curls. The passenger window was shattered, a web of cracks with a hole punched through the center, glass scattered across the seat and the floor mat. The center console was open. Pearl's brass tin was on the asphalt 6 feet from the front bumper, resting upside down on its lid. Ezra picked it up before I could stop him. He turned it over in his small hands and ran his thumb across a fresh dent on the top, right next to the older one that had been there since before he was born. "Mom, what happened to Grandma Pearl's box?" I took the tin from him gently and told him to go back inside. He went, but slowly, looking over his shoulder twice. Then I opened the Tesla app on my phone and pulled up the Sentry Mode footage. The video was sharp. Timestamp 11:47 p.m., June 14. Celeste, wearing a dark hoodie with the hood down, walking to my car with a box cutter in her right hand. She crouched at the front driver's side tire and pushed the blade in at an angle, dragging it sideways. The tire hissed. She moved to the rear. After the second tire, she stepped to the passenger side and struck the window with the butt of the box cutter. The glass cracked on the first hit and collapsed inward on the second. She reached through the broken window, pulled Pearl's tin from the open center console, looked at it for 2 seconds with the expression you give something you find irritating rather than meaningful, and threw its sidearm onto the pavement. It bounced once and landed upside down. Then she slashed the remaining 2 tires. I watched it twice. The first time through, my eyes stayed on Celeste, the box cutter, the crouch, the way she threw Pearl's tin like it was junk she found under a seat. The second time, I made myself look at the rest of the frame. Celeste's car was still visible, parked 3 spots away. The interior light was on. And sitting in the passenger seat, hands resting in her lap, face partially lit by the glow of the overhead bulb, was my mother. Loretta was not sleeping. She was not on her phone. She was not turned away. She was looking directly at the Tesla while Celeste smashed the window. Her posture was still, composed, and upright. The posture of someone who had been told what was about to happen and had chosen to be in the car when it did. She did not get out to stop it. She did not honk the horn. She sat in the passenger seat with her hands folded and watched her older daughter destroy her younger daughter's car in a parking lot at midnight. At 12:03 a.m., 16 minutes after the footage ended, Celeste sent me a text. It said, "Oops, don't park near me next time," followed by a laughing emoji. I did not see that text until the next morning, standing in the parking lot with glass on my shoes and my son holding a dented tin box. My hands were steady. My breathing was steady. The part of me that wanted to scream was already being managed by the part of me that reviews discrepancies for a living. At work, when a vendor's story does not match their invoices, I do not call them and yell. I pull the records, I organize the timeline, and I hand the file to the people whose job it is to act on it. This was no different. I almost deleted the footage. My thumb hovered over the archive icon for 3 full seconds. Then I looked at the tin box in my other hand, at the second dent catching the morning light, and I thought about Pearl's card inside it. Every dollar you earn is a vote for who you are. I saved the footage to 3 locations, my phone, my laptop, and a cloud backup with a timestamp log. Then I called the police non-emergency line. Officer Tate arrived at 9:40 a.m. He walked around the Tesla, crouched to examine the tire cuts. photographed the broken passenger window, and documented the glass spread across the interior. Then he watched the Sentry Mode footage on my phone. He asked me to email him a copy. He wrote up the report: criminal mischief, property damage. He documented the estimated damage and said the prosecutor's office would determine the final charge level based on the total. 4 replacement tires, broken passenger window with glass cleanup, wheel inspection, towing to the service center, and a 6-day rental. Preliminary damage estimate $6,200. Case number assigned on the spot. Officer Tate looked at me. Do you know the woman with the box cutter? My sister. Celeste Beckett. She lives on Sycamore, apartment 204. He wrote it down. And the woman in the passenger seat of the other vehicle? That is my mother. Tate paused with his pen on the pad. Your mother was present during the incident? She was in the car the entire time. Interior light was on. She did not intervene. He wrote it down without further comment. He handed me the case number on a card, told me the district attorney's office would review the footage, and left. After Tate left, I sat on the steps outside my apartment building with the police report in one hand and my phone in the other. Loretta had texted me that morning at 7:02 a.m., 15 minutes before I discovered the tires. Her text read, "You know she hates being told no. Just help her, Yara. She sent it before I even knew what had happened." She knew. She was there. And her first instinct the next morning was not to warn me or apologize, but to tell me, again, to give Celeste what she wanted. I almost called Loretta to work it out. My thumb was on her name in the contacts. Then Ezra came outside and sat next to me on the steps. He was holding Pearl's tin box in both hands again, turning it carefully, studying the dent. "Mom, why did someone cut the car's tires?" I put my phone back in my pocket and told him we would take the bus for a few days. On Monday morning, June 16th, I called Avery Frost. Avery is a civil litigation attorney whose firm had handled a vendor dispute for Redline Logistics 2 years earlier. I sat in my car on my lunch break with the windows up and explained everything. I emailed her the Sentry Mode footage, the police report, and the repair estimate. She called back in 40 minutes. The police report is documented and the footage has been referred for prosecutorial review, Avery said. I can separately pursue a civil property damage claim. Tires, broken window, towing, rental, the footage gives you strong evidence. But it still has to move through the normal process. I can file by the end of the week. I told her to do it. But between the Monday call and the Friday filing, I did something else. I did what my training at Redline had made second nature. I followed the money. For the past 3 years, Loretta had called me every January and asked me to cover her annual property taxes. She said her retirement income barely covered her mortgage, utilities, and prescriptions. The taxes were $4,200 a year. I paid them with a check made out to the county assessor's office. 3 years, 3 checks, $12,600 total. By removing one of her largest annual expenses, I had given her room to keep rescuing Celeste in ways I could not see. I never questioned it. She was my mother. She said she needed help. I helped. The compliance auditor in me had always drawn a hard line between my work brain and my family brain. The family brain trusted. The work brain verified. After the Sentry Mode footage, the family brain went quiet and the work brain opened the file. I pulled my own bank records, 3 canceled checks, each for $4,200, each with the county assessor as payee. All cleared. Then I thought about the $20,000 Celeste had demanded, the car payment she was behind on, and the apartment she could not consistently afford. The numbers were not adding up the way Loretta's story said they should. I called my Aunt Vivian. Vivian Oakes is Pearl's other daughter, Loretta's older sister by 3 years. She is 57, retired from teaching, and lives 40 minutes north in a house with a backyard garden full of zinnias that Pearl planted 20 years ago. Vivian is the kind of person who listens more than she speaks and remembers more than she says. She is also the only person in my family who has ever made me feel like I did not have to earn the right to be in the room. When my marriage fell apart 2 years ago, Vivian drove 3 hours each way for 2 straight weeks to pick Ezra up from school so I could work overtime without losing my custody schedule. She was in my kitchen at 6 in the morning making his lunch, and one morning she turned to me with a thermos in her hand and said, "I will be here every morning until you do not need me. And then I will still come on Fridays." She came on Fridays for 4 months. I called Vivian on Tuesday evening, June 17th. "Auntie Viv, I need to ask you something about Mom's finances." A pause. Then, ask, "Do you know anything about a personal loan Mom took out about 6 months ago?" The pause stretched. "How did you find out about that?" "I have not found out about anything. I am asking because the numbers do not add up. Vivian told me everything." 6 months earlier, Loretta had asked Vivian to co-sign a $15,000 personal loan through their credit union. Loretta said it was for home repairs, a new roof, updated plumbing, things the house needed. Vivian co-signed. The monthly payments were $340. 3 weeks before my call, the credit union had contacted Vivian because Loretta had missed her 3rd consecutive payment. As co-signer, Vivian was now potentially liable for the full remaining balance. Vivian had confronted Loretta, and Loretta had admitted the money was never for home repairs. She had given all $15,000 to Celeste over a span of 4 months, 3 months of back rent, a car payment that was 60 days past due, 2 maxed-out credit cards that were approaching collections. The entire $15,000, I asked, every cent, and Celeste has not repaid $1. I sat at my kitchen table with the phone pressed to my ear. Between the taxes I had covered and Vivian's loan exposure, our family had absorbed $27,600 in support, while Celeste demanded another $20. 0 row on top of it. But Vivian was not finished. "Yara, there is something else you need to know, and I should have told you months ago, but I did not have proof until now, and I did not want to cause pain without being sure." She told me that 8 months ago, Celeste had started telling the extended family a story. According to Celeste, Pearl had set aside $30, 0 in a savings account earmarked for the family. And after Pearl died, Yara had quietly transferred the entire amount into her own personal account before anyone could object. Celeste told this story to Uncle Ross at a barbecue. She told it to Cousin Jade over coffee. She told it to Cousin Owen in a text exchange. She told it with enough detail and enough emotion that they believed her. "That is why they stopped calling you," Vivian said quietly. "Ross did not invite you to the 4th of July. Jade stopped answering your texts. Owen removed you on social media. They think you stole from Pearl." My chest went tight. For 8 months, I had noticed the silence. I thought it was the divorce. I thought people drifted apart. I thought I was being too sensitive. It was not drifting. It was Celeste, building a wall around me with a lie she invented from nothing. Pearl's estate was simple. I had the disbursement records in my filing cabinet because I was named as a beneficiary. Pearl left $24,200 in total savings. $14,200 went to burial costs and outstanding medical bills at the hospice. $8,000 went to Celeste. $2,000 went to me, along with the brass tin box that Pearl had specifically named in a handwritten note attached to her will. There was no $30,000 account. There never had been. Celeste received 4 times what I received, and then she told the family I was the thief. If you are still here, you are watching karma unfolded, and you know what comes next. But I promise you, the part that hurt the most was not the tires. It was not even the money. It was sitting at my kitchen table, looking at a notarized document that proved my sister had invented a crime and pinned it on me for 8 months while I wondered what I had done wrong. I almost let the lie stand. 8 months of silence from my own cousins. 8 months of wondering what I had done wrong, and some part of me wanted to just absorb it and move on the way I had absorbed everything else. Then I pulled up the estate disbursement page on my laptop. The numbers were notarized and final. $8,000 to Celeste Beckett, $2,000 to Yara Beckett, $14,200 to funeral home and medical providers. Total, $24,200. There was no ambiguity. There was no missing $30,000. If you have been watching Karma Unfolded, you know this story is not about 4 slashed tires. The tires were the match. The fire was already built. On Wednesday, June 18th, I sat at my kitchen table after Ezra went to bed and built the case the way I build an audit file at Redline, time-stamped, cross-referenced. Every claim supported by a document I could put in someone's hand and say, read this. The evidence folder had 5 sections. Section 1, Sentry Mode footage. 4 screenshots printed in color on glossy paper, timestamps visible in the corner of each frame. Celeste's face clear in the second and third shots, Loretta's face partially lit by the interior light, recognizable in all 4 frames. Section 2, Police Report. Case number, responding officer's name, damage estimate of $6,200. Section 3, Avery Frost's civil claim filing. Property damage of $6,200 plus towing and 6-day rental of $840. Total, $7,040. Court date printed on the final page. Section 4. Pearl's estate disbursement records, notarized 3 line items, $8,000 to Celeste, $2,000 plus the tin box to Yara, $14,200 to funeral and medical. Total $24,200. No $30,000 account, no hidden transfer. Section 5. 3 years of canceled checks from my bank account to the county assessor's office. $4,200 each. Total $12,600. Annotated with a note cross referencing Vivian's statement about the $15,000 loan and where the money actually went. I printed everything on my home printer. I organized the 5 sections with labeled dividers, the way I label audit tabs at Redline. On top, I placed a full-color Sentry Mode screenshot, Celeste holding the box cutter at the passenger window, face lit by the parking lot lamp, and behind her through the Honda's windshield, Loretta under the interior light. Beneath the screenshot, I wrote in black marker, 11:47 p.m. June 14. Case hashtag 2024-064471. I placed the stack in a manila envelope 10 by 13. On top, a typed 1-page letter, factual, numbered, free of emotion. It ended with 1 sentence, Avery Frost will handle all further communication. On Friday evening, I called Vivian and told her what I planned to do. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said one thing. What time on Saturday? 10 in the morning. My front steps. I will be there at 9:30. On Saturday, June 21st, I woke at 6:45 a.m. I made Ezra breakfast, set him up with his book and a glass of juice, and asked my neighbor to keep an ear out for an hour. I put the manila envelope in my bag, drove to Celeste's apartment building on Sycamore, and parked across the street at 7:52 a.m. The building had an exterior staircase to the 2nd floor. I climbed the stairs, walked to Celeste's door, and taped the manila envelope across it at eye level with packing tape on all 4 corners. The envelope was thick enough to bow slightly against the wood. The Sentry Mode screenshot was visible through the unsealed top. Celeste's own face staring back at anyone who looked. You could not open the door without touching it. I walked back to my car and drove home. At 8:10 a.m., Celeste opened her apartment door. I know this because at 8:11, my phone buzzed with a screenshot she took of the photograph taped to the outside of the envelope. She had pulled it halfway off the door. By the 2nd page, she was no longer taking screenshots. She was calling. My phone rang at 8:12. I did not answer. She called again at 8:14, at 8:16, at 8:19, at 8:23. At 8:25 a.m. I sent 1 text, read everything in the envelope, then we can talk. Saturday the 28th, my front steps, 10 a.m. She did not respond. The week that followed was the quietest of my life. No calls from Celeste, no calls from Loretta, no texts, no voicemails, no emails. The silence was not the comfortable kind. It was the kind that happens at work when a vendor realizes the auditor has already pulled the files and there is nothing left to explain away. On Saturday morning, June 28th, I sat on my front steps at 9:45 a.m. Vivian had arrived at 9:30, carrying 2 paper cups of coffee from the gas station on Route 11. She handed me one, sat down beside me, and said nothing. We drank our coffee and watched the parking lot. At 10:07 a.m., Celeste's silver Honda turned into the lot. Loretta was in the passenger seat. They parked near the entrance and walked toward the building together. Celeste was holding the manila envelope in her left hand, bent and creased, the tape still hanging from one corner. When she saw Vivian sitting next to me on the steps, she stopped walking. "What is she doing here?" "Vivian co-signed the loan," I said. "She has a right to be in this conversation." Celeste looked at Loretta. Loretta looked at the concrete. They came closer. Celeste stood at the bottom of the steps. Loretta stayed 2 steps behind her, arms crossed tight. Celeste held up the envelope with one hand like it was something she wanted to return. This footage could be anyone in a hoodie. "You cannot prove it was me. Your face is visible for 11 seconds between the second and third tire. Officer Tate confirmed identification on the scene." "Fine, I will pay for the tires, every cent. Drop the report and the lawsuit and we are done. The report is with the prosecutor's office. That is not mine to withdraw." Celeste's jaw tightened. Her weight shifted from one foot to the other. "So what do you want? Money? An apology? You want me to get on my knees on your apartment steps? I do not want anything from you, Celeste. That is the part you have never understood. This is insane. Mom, tell her this is insane." Loretta did not move. She was looking at a crack in the sidewalk like it held instructions. "Mom," Loretta's voice came out thin. "Just listen to what she has to say, Celeste." Celeste let out a breath that was half laugh, half disbelief. She turned back to me and shook her head slowly. Vivian spoke. Her voice was low, steady, and aimed directly at Celeste. "I co-signed your mother's loan. $15,000. The credit union called me 3 weeks ago because she missed the 3rd payment. I know where the money went. I know about the back rent and the car payment and the credit cards." Celeste cut in fast. "That is between me and Mom. That has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with me. My name is on the loan. And I also know you spent the last 8 months telling Ross and Jade and Owen that Yara stole $30,000 from Pearl's savings. I have the estate disbursement records, Celeste. Pearl left $24,200 total. You received $8,000. Yara received $2,000. The rest went to the funeral home and the hospice. There was no $30,000. There never was. You made it up, and 3 people in this family stopped speaking to your sister because of a lie you told at a barbecue." Loretta's hands went to her thighs and pressed flat against her pants, fingers spread wide. She did not look up. She did not say a word. Celeste took a step backward. That money was supposed to be more. Pearl promised more. She told me herself. Vivian's voice did not change. Pearl's will is notarized. The disbursement is court-filed. There is no promised more. There is only what she left and what you took. I stood up from the steps. You destroyed my car on June 14th at 11:47 p.m. 4 tires slashed on camera, face visible, with a box cutter. You smashed my passenger window and threw Pearl's tin box on the ground. Then you texted me oopses with a laughing emoji. You told 3 members of our family that I stole $30,000 from an estate that totaled $24,200. That is defamation. You took $15,000 from a loan our mother cannot afford to repay, a loan my aunt is now liable for. You let me pay $12,600 in property taxes over 3 years while Mom funneled money to your credit cards. And you walked into Mom's kitchen and demanded another $20,000 from me while calling my son quiet like it was something broken. Loretta finally spoke, her voice thin and cracked. Yara, I did not know she was going to break anything. I thought she was just going to talk to you. You were in the car at midnight, Mom. You watched her slash 4 tires and smash a window and throw Pearl's box on the ground, and you did not say a word. I looked at Loretta directly. You sat in that car at 11:47 p.m. and watched her do it. You texted me the next morning and told me to help her. You borrowed $15,000 against Vivian's name and gave every dollar to Celeste. You told me you needed help with your taxes while your loan payments were going to her credit cards. The property tax checks stopped today. The phone calls about money stopped today. Do not call this number for financial help again. Avery Frost will handle everything from here. Celeste's face had gone pale during the first half. By the time I finished, her breathing had changed. Short, shallow pulls through her nose, the kind that happen when the body is trying to keep up with what the brain is processing. Her right hand was still holding the envelope, but her fingers had gone loose, and one corner of the manila paper was brushing the concrete. She looked at Loretta for help. Loretta was staring at Vivian with both hands still pressed against her own legs, lips pressed together so tight the color had drained from them. Neither spoke. Neither moved. You said Pearl's tin box was the only inheritance I would ever give Ezra. My voice was flat. That tin box has my first pay stub and Pearl's handwriting inside it. You threw it on the asphalt at 11:47 p.m. and walked away. Ezra picked it up the next morning and asked what happened to the dent. He is 8 years old. He held it like it was something alive. That is the inheritance you gave him, Celeste. You texted oops about it. Celeste opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Then she reached for her phone. I will Venmo you the full repair cost right now, every dollar. I will send it before I leave this parking lot. Just make this stop. She held the phone out, screen facing me, the amount already typed into the app. I reached into my bag and pulled out one sheet of paper, the final page of Avery Frost's civil filing, the one with the court date printed at the top in bold. I set it on the step between Celeste's phone and my coffee cup. Pearl's tin box is still in my car. The camera caught you throwing it. June 14th, 11:47 p.m. Celeste's phone slipped from her right hand and hit the edge of the concrete step. The screen cracked in one corner. She sat down on the bottom step without deciding to, the way a person sits when their knees make the decision for them. Her shoulders curved forward. Her breathing went shallow and rapid. She pressed both palms against her forehead and held them there. She looked at Loretta. Loretta had closed her eyes, chin tucked down, as if she were trying to make herself smaller on the sidewalk. Yara, Celeste's voice had dropped to something I had never heard from her before. Quiet, stripped. We are sisters. We are. That is what makes this worse. Please, I will tell Ross the truth. I will fix everything. Just stop this. The truth is already out, Celeste. Vivian has the records. Avery has the filing. Officer Tate has the footage. There is nothing for me to stop. The neighbor 2 doors down turned off her hose. The sudden silence made the parking lot feel enormous. Celeste stood up slowly. She picked up her cracked phone from the step. She looked at Loretta, who still had not opened her eyes. Then she turned and walked to her car without saying another word. Loretta followed about 10 paces behind, arms still crossed, head down. They got in. The car started. They pulled out of the lot, and the space where the Honda had been went empty and stayed that way. Vivian picked up both coffee cups and looked at me. Pearl would have been proud of you today. I nodded. My hands were shaking for the first time all morning, but only after they were gone. The next morning, Sunday, June 29th, Vivian hosted a brunch at her house. She invited Uncle Ross, Cousin Jade, and Cousin Owen. Celeste and Loretta were not invited. Vivian did not give a speech. She set the estate disbursement records flat on the table, between the coffee carafe and the fruit salad. She opened her tablet, turned the screen so everyone could see, and played the Sentry Mode footage from beginning to end. The timestamps were visible. Celeste's face was unmistakable in the light of the parking lot lamp. Loretta was partially visible under the interior light in the passenger seat. No one asked who it was. Uncle Ross set his fork down slowly and pushed his plate about 6 inches away. He did not pick it back up. Jade pressed one hand over her mouth and stared at me across the table with wet eyes. Owen stood, walked to the window that looked out over Pearl's garden, and stayed there with his back to the room and his hands in his pockets for a long time. No one asked Vivian to stop the video. No one said there must be another side to the story. No one defended Celeste. When the footage ended, the room stayed silent for a long time. Jade was the first to speak. She looked at me and said, "I deleted your number 3 months ago because of what Celeste told me. I thought you took Pearl's money." Her voice broke on the last word. Owen turned from the window, walked to the table, and sat down heavily. He did not say anything, but he reached across the table and squeezed Vivian's hand once, hard. Ross called me that evening. He said 2 words first, "I am sorry." Then he asked how Ezra was doing and whether he needed anything for the school year. I told him Ezra's science fair was in September and that he had been working on a project about weather patterns. Ross said he would be there in the front row with his camera. He meant it. I could hear it in the way his voice steadied, the way a person sounds when they are making up for lost time. Over the following weeks, the consequences arrived in layers. Avery filed the civil claim for the documented repair, towing, rental, and related costs. Celeste was formally served and given time to respond. When she failed to answer the claim within the response window, Avery began the next enforcement steps. Nothing happened overnight, but the debt was now moving through a process Celeste could no longer talk her way out of. She would also need to retain a criminal defense attorney to address the prosecutor's review of the vandalism footage, which meant legal costs she had no savings to cover. Loretta received her next property tax notice in early July. For the first time in 3 years, no check from me arrived to cover it. She called Vivian. Vivian told her the credit union expected the next loan payment on the 12th and that she had retained an attorney to explore recovery options if a 4th payment was missed. Vivian did not raise her voice. She did not offer to help. She had already helped enough, and the help had been repaid with lies and silence. On a Tuesday evening in mid-July, Celeste drove to Loretta's house. Vivian learned this from the next-door neighbor, who mentioned it later that week when Vivian brought over tomatoes from Pearl's garden. The neighbor said Celeste pulled into the driveway around 7:30 p.m. She sat with the engine idling and the windows up, looking at the front of the house. The porch light was off. The front door was closed. The blinds were drawn. Loretta's car was in the garage, but the house was dark in a way that did not invite approach. Celeste turned the engine off. Then she turned it back on. She did this twice. After 11 minutes, she backed out and drove away. She did not come back the following week, or the week after that. When Vivian told me this, I felt something I did not expect. Not satisfaction, not anger, just a heaviness in my chest, like watching a door close on a room you used to eat breakfast in. The parking spot next to Celeste's apartment, the one where my Tesla used to sit when I came over for dinner or to drop off groceries, had been empty since June. It would stay empty. Several weeks later, on a Thursday evening in late July, I sat on the front steps of my apartment building with the summer light going soft through the trees. Ezra was beside me, eating a popsicle that was melting faster than he could keep up with, a library book balanced on his knee. He was reading about a kid who builds a raft. The brass tin box was between us on the step, lid open, Pearl's index card visible in the warm light. The two dents on the lid caught the glow differently, the old one shallow and smooth, the new one sharper, with a tiny scratch running through it. Below us in the parking lot, the Tesla sat in its numbered spot on 4 new tires and a new passenger window. My phone buzzed inside the tin box. I picked it up. Vivian had sent a photo. Pearl's zinnia garden in full bloom. Reds and oranges and yellows crowding each other out in the raised beds she built with railroad ties and her bare hands 20 years ago, the summer she decided her backyard would be louder than any argument in the house. I set the phone back inside the tin box and closed the lid. "What chapter are you on?" I asked Ezra. 7, he said. "The raft is almost done." "Good, that is the best part." The sprinklers clicked on across the parking lot. The water hit the asphalt in a rhythm that sounded like something Pearl would have tapped on the kitchen counter while she waited for the biscuits to rise. Ezra leaned his shoulder against mine, and the popsicle dripped onto his shoe, and neither of us moved. The tin box sat between us, with both dents facing up. Pearl's handwriting was inside. "Every dollar you earn is a vote for who you are." I had cast mine, and I was done paying for someone else's choices.